This is the Red Epic camera build. Our Epic comes in 2 cases, and the lenses that are paired with the kit are also in another case. So a total of 3 camera cases and this tripod for our Red Epic build today. So first I'm going to take this out of the top pack. Set that aside. So the tripod folds out much like all the other ones. It's just a lot heavier duty. This has carbon fiber legs, which makes it a little bit lighter. Each one of them I'm able to pull up. And I'm going to tighten the pan handle here. Usually we store the tripod head and handle a little bit loose. So not the loose on the ball adjustment there, but loose on the pan and the tilt adjustment. All right, so once I've got my tripod out, I'm going to pull the tripod quick release plate out. And so let me show you that on the back side. It's similar to other soccer tripods if you've used one of those before. Right here on the back, I'm going to pull that plunger across. I'm going to pull that plunger across and clicks into place, and that would actually push the plate up to release it. If I push down on the tripod plate, it automatically captures that into that shell. So I want to make sure that the tripod is secure on there. This plate has a 3/8 inch screw, so I'm going to start the camera build from the base up. So the first thing I need to find is this bridge plate in the Red Epic kit. The Scarlet also has one of these as well. So I'm going to screw that in, and you'll notice that this bridge plate here, I'm going to have the angles are going to be going away because the camera is going to latch on to that. So I'm going to tighten this 3/8 inch screw into the center of it, just as a starting point. Now, if I want to make that really tight, if you don't happen to have your T-handle Swiss Tools screwdriver next to you, sometimes a nickel will work, but it has a wider opening in that screw, so you want to make sure that you're not using something too fine that'll strip it out. So once we've got our bridge plate in place there, the next thing I'm going to look for in the kit is the base plate for the camera. So this looks something, yeah, quite unique in Red's design. So it's another quick release plate, but this one slides onto that dovetail. Now I want to make sure that I'm looking for where the lens front is, and if this is the front of the tripod, I'm going to slide that in place. Making sure that the locking mechanism is loose. Now I want to make sure and tighten that though, so that the camera doesn't slide off of that bridge plate. So now that we're ready to take the camera body itself, I've got the pan adjustment tilted there. So I'm going to find the red brain. And so we leave the Epic built up this much. So there's some accessory rail up here on the top, as well as this compact rail bridge plate down there on the bottom. So we're going to leave this attached to the camera when we store it. The lens cap or the body cap, you can see, is on there already. And then on the back side, we've got a spot for the remote. So this is going to slide, or actually set into place onto this dovetail. So it sort of goes onto the sides. We'll do it from the back view. And as I push down on this side, it causes this mechanism to latch into the middle position, and then finally I put it into that final position there, which locks it into place. So now the camera is locked on the tripod. There is a little bit of wiggle to it, but make sure that it is latched to that. To release this, I'm going to again pull this all the way forward and rock it to the side, and so I can make that happen. So again, I'm going to set the pins on the side there, and this latches into place, and then I lock. See that my head is a little bit loose here. We'll level the head and adjust my tilt again. There we go. So one more time for the folks down front. I'm going to release this, rock it to the side, And again, it rocks into place. There's a couple of little arrows right here on the top on top of that plate. And I'm going to find that spot. And then it takes a little bit of pressure to push down on that. And if it's not working, it's not in the right spot. There we go. So it latches out part way, and now I lock it into place. So now the camera brain is in place. Now it's time to add some of the accessories. So I'm going to start with some rails. These are some lightweight short rails, and each one of those tightens into place here. And that's going to be for our follow focus and our map box eventually. The kit comes with a couple of handles. So if you want to hang on to something. So we can add some handles to the camera. There's a couple in the kit. We can put them in different spots depending on how you're operating with this. Now, each one of these little wing nuts here is ratchetable. So that means I can pull out and tighten again. So I move that across and tighten, and if I pull out on the ratchet, it'll allow, on the wing nut, it'll allow me to spin back to the original position and tighten it more. So if I can't get enough tightness, there we go. So now I have a firm handle to hang on to there. So up next, I found the monitor. So the monitor was kept in a into microfiber bag here, both to protect the screen and also it sort of cleans it. Not really. With this kit, it's not a touch screen, and it says that on there, even though it looks like it's very fingerprinted and full of germs, most likely. So there's mounting points, I believe, on the front. Nope, the back one's no longer in use. So I simply am using this cine arm to screw into, would help if I tighten that up a little bit. There we go. So I screw into the monitor there until it's just tight. And then the thumb screw. All right, and then I have lots of different mounting points on the camera here, depending on where I want this monitor to be. I could mount that accordingly. So I'm just going to put it over here on the side. Now, a handy tool to have in my AC bag might be a small crescent wrench. As this nut right here is, I can tighten that. It looks like folks have used all kinds of different tools for it. But a small crescent wrench would be an awesome addition. I think I have one that I got from a IKEA toolkit. And then the cine arm works in such a way that I loosen it until I find the point where I want to put that monitor. That will also make sense for the operator. I need to find a specific cable for the Red camera. So these are proprietary, and they only fit into a particular spot on the body and on the monitor. So I want to find that keyway, which is just the shape of the barrel here has a specific little area that allows me to fit that in there. So it's not a screw mount. I have to find the right barrel and keyway, and then it slides into place and it's held in there by tension. So you notice that my default position here kind of puts part of the cable in front of the lens mount. Not my favorite design. So maybe we'll tuck that away until we get lenses on there. So now I have a monitor on there. I'm going to pan this around and we'll take a look at the back side here. I'm going to loosen this handle a bit and move it over. There we go. Now our remote for this camera, the Red remote, actually positions itself here on the back of the camera. And when it's charged up and connected to the camera, I can actually use this as a remote trigger and also to adjust the menu settings. And even when it's attached to the camera, this is how I can control the menu items. So I'm using this as a joystick and cursor later on once I get that connected. So I need to add a battery mount, and since the Red mount takes the place on the back side there, we have this sort of flying mount that goes onto the top rail. Each of these are called NATO rails. So I'm loosening up this NATO clamp here. There we go. It looks like it was just pinched into place. Same thing with those. Those are ratcheting if they will not fit in the right spot. Perhaps my handle needs to go away for a moment. And we'll find a home for it eventually. All right, so I've got that tightened into place, and this, again, proprietary cable fits into the power input underneath the camera here on the back side. There's a number of inputs here and outputs. So if I wanted to run SDI video out of here over to a monitor, that's the input or the output where that would come from right there. Also the power supply. I can run this camera off of wall power, so if my batteries aren't charged or if I want to just keep the camera running for long periods of time, I could use that as well. So I'm going to put that handle back on, but I'm going to flip it around frontwards. There we go. So now I got another grabbing position for that. And perhaps I could put another handle over on the side here. Now those nails are customizable, so I could put a battery over there if I wanted to on that side. It might make the side a bit heavier, but it would work as well, as long as the power cable reaches here. So next up I need a battery. The kit comes with 3 of these Anton Bauer Cine 150 batteries, which take quite a while to charge, and depending on how long and how cold and all kinds of other factors, I could run one of these down in no time at all. So make sure that you're on top of your batteries charging. You want to make sure to let batteries rest after you've used them or depleted them. They need to rest for a little bit before charging them again. So make sure that you wait, say, 20 minutes or so before that comes off. These are a V-mount type lock, and so it fits into that V, and you'll want to wait for it to click into place. You see I didn't really get a click there. Still not getting a click. There we go. So it has to click into place and make sure that it's mounted in there securely. If I pan around again, you see here's my release button for the battery mount right there. So if I press in on that and lift up, my battery's going to come off just like that. All right. That's positionable. I could tighten this tension right here with an Allen screw. So an Allen tool set that's in your kit, along with a crescent wrench and a fat screwdriver, like this one from PB Swiss Tools. Got it on Amazon, I think. So some Allen tools would be very helpful just for tightening down that tension right there. So now I have a battery and a monitor and no lens. So we'll work with that next. I can power up and adjust menu settings and do some other things with the camera without a lens on it. The power button and the record button are over here on the right side of the camera, and in front of the camera is another record button right down here. So that's very nice. There's 2 user buttons right here, user 1 and user 2, and those I can use for different functions that I've set up in the menu. But by default, if I press user 1 and 2 simultaneously, it will eject the media card. So I want to make sure and eject the media before pulling it out of there. Otherwise, it could be damaged, meaning your data could be damaged and unrecoverable. So you want to make sure and eject the media card correctly. Speaking of which, let's find one of those media cards. Each of the kits comes with 3 64 gig SSD cards. So depending on your settings, this could get you anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour's worth of footage for sure. So I simply slide that into the slot there. When I'm removing it, it takes a little bit of tension to grab a hold of that. They want it to be a little bit difficult. That's what this protector is for here, so that it doesn't slip out of place easily. So firmly place that in there, and it should show in the menu that it is mounted. All right, so now we've got media, we've got a battery. Let's add some additional accessories. If I wanted to record audio, there is a third-party A box here for that, and so I can attach that to this silver barrel up here at the top of the camera. and each one of these connects back to the inputs on the front of the camera. Click. See if this one will reach here. And again, more cables in front of the lens. There we go. You should go back there. Okay. There is an additional monitor input on the module on the back side here. So there's an additional video output or EVF output there. Now, typically we had this, the build of this camera come with an eyepiece as well. But right now it is not in service. So that takes the cable away from my lens mount a little bit. And I'm going to move my battery over just a little bit for weight distribution. I've got this handle, I've got audio. I'm ready for a lens, I think. Before the lens, I'm going to throw the follow focus on. So the follow focus is a geared system to allow me control over the lens without touching the lens. So I'm still touching this, and I'll have some other accessories for that. The way that it fits in the case, we actually have to remove the follow focus wheel from the follow focus mechanism. So you're going to want to find, again, the keyway here needs to fit into that same spot, and it should be completely flush with the mechanism and the wheel, and I'll tighten that. So once that's on this wheel, we'll control this gear, which will attach to the lens. Now this is movable, so depending on the lens and what lenses I'm using with this particular follow focus, I could put it on this side or on this side. So typically the follow focus wheel is going to land on the operator's side. So the AC will be near the operator for this. But it is possible to put the wheel on the dummy side, so this opposite side here, but I may not be able to see the settings on the lens as easily. So right now I've got that loosely placed into position so that I'm ready for putting a lens on there. This is the Sockler Video 18 head. We could also build this camera on a Sockler DV12 head, which I think we have 2 of in circulation. So the 18 is a little bit bigger than the 12, which is why I've chosen it today for the Red Epic build. It's a little bit heavier camera than the Scarlett or the Sony f55. Though any of them could work with any of those tripods. The 12 is just a little bit smaller. So depending on how the weight is going, I could adjust things on this head a little bit. So if I loosen the tilt right now, we're very much back heavy. The camera wants to slide towards the back here. Now I have a couple of ways to adjust that. You see the tripod itself has a slide mechanism, but unfortunately we are all the way at 0 for that. So front heavy, so right now we're very back heavy. I could adjust that on this sliding bridge plate right now, but I want to kind of keep it near the fulcrum for now. So we'll see how we do once we get the lenses on and the matte box, but we may need to adjust that a little bit more. Okay, so the PL mount on all of our cameras stands for positive lock, and what that means is it's a very simple mechanism, but very secure for putting on lenses. And it's across many different platforms. So developed originally by Aeroflex, but it's available on film cameras and many cinema cameras. It works in such a way that I'm going to twist this counterclockwise. Let me just adjust my pan there. So I'm going to adjust this counterclockwise about 1/4 of a turn and be ready for your lens or body cap to come off there. Now I want to make sure and keep all my fingers and other debris and hair and anything else out of this area where the sensor is, so that we don't get anything on the sensor. I don't want to use any canned air or anything like that. No other tissues or anything else in there. If I do spot anything in there, I would let the equipment room know. about it right away. So the PL mount works in such a way that there's a small keyway here that's going to adjust or going to fit into the cove relief. In this case, there's a pin up here in the top right corner, and that pin should fit into there. And then we slide that mechanism again a quarter turn clockwise. We'll lock that into place, and now it is secure. So again, counterclockwise, and I'm able to remove that. So I want to try and keep this covered until I have a lens nearby. So I don't want to let this sit around open while I'm waiting for a lens to come from somewhere else. The lens kit should be near the camera, as we're going to be changing lenses frequently depending on the setup. So right now, and also make sure that whoever took this off at the beginning of the day doesn't go home with it early before the camera's packed up. I'm going to start with a lens here, whatever I grab. So there are 6 lenses in the CP2 kit, which is what we have paired with the Red Epic, partially so we can cover the 5K sensor on this camera, but also because the map box that we have in this kit fits the CP2 lenses. They have this very large 114 millimeter front. Each one of them has this PL mount back, though you can get CP2 lenses in other mounts as well. So typically I'm going to look at the lens and I'm going to see where the markings are for infinity and for the widest aperture there. And I want to make sure that that point or that line is at the 3 o'clock position on the PL mount, so that the operator could easily look at that and say, hey, this is my lens here. And then I tighten that PL mount into place. So when the operator comes to look at it, the focus is at infinity, so it's furthest point away, and it's wide open, which is the brightest it can be. And then from there, the camera operator and AC and director of photography will make adjustments and make the settings for that particular scene. It's at this point that I could move that focus adjustment into place. So I'm going to move the follow focus forward here until that gear fits with the lens barrel. Tighten that into place, and now you can see that my lens can move. All right, I didn't tighten that very well. All right, so we reach infinity. And in this particular lens, I do have markings on both sides. So if I did want to put the wheel over on this side, I could see some of those markings as well. So right now, we're at 3 feet, and so on. All right, the last thing that I want to put on here, I think, is a map box. So I have the map box here, which is capable of holding 2 4 by 6.5 filters. One of them is rotatable, so if I have a situation where I want to use a polarizer, I could rotate it. So we'll deal with that in just a moment here. But I just want to make sure that these are loose. They also fit onto the rails, and they slide right up to that lens, hopefully. Might be a little bit tight there. Some other accessories that go on the map box. I've got a shade for the top portion here. I want to make sure not lose these little red nuts that come with the map box, so don't unscrew them too much. This slides into place. And I want to make sure and take this off. It doesn't fold completely shut like that, so I want to take this off before. But if I'm having trouble with a flare on the lens, as you can see, the light that I'm using for this demo is casting the light on the lens itself there. So I want to make sure that this is shading it enough, but also not in the frame. So if I'm looking through the camera and I start to see this black shade coming in on the top, then I know it's in the frame, and that's not going to work out so well. But I want to shade the lens from lens flares, which is going to cause it to kind of ghost out a little bit. Now, typically, this map box should be fitting right up to the lens there, and if it's not, we might use a little bit of black paper tape to cover that area so that we don't get reflections if we are using a filter. All right, we're almost completely built here. There are a couple of siders for the map box as well, so those would fit into the red pins as well. And the last accessory I think that we have here is a whip So the whip would allow me to, it fits into the follow focus wheel. There we go. And so now I can be at a distance from the camera while the operator is using it and adjust the focus according to the scales that are on the lens. Or if I use a specific water-based marker, the Stadler makes a particular marker that you'll find at most camera shops, or you could order directly from Film Tools, I believe, and mark on this wheel. You can see folks have tried to use dry erase markers and it's kind of ruined it a little bit, so please don't use dry erase markers. If I need to, I would put some tape on here, some paper tape, and then make new markers on that paper tape. So I can remove this to clean it as well, but the whip is helpful for that. But sometimes if I don't need that whip, or the operator is pulling their own focus, I could remove that whip. The only other accessories that we have in the kit are a drive for the SD media cards, some adapters for different types of connections here. We've got the newest USB Thunderbolt and standard Thunderbolt to an old FireWire cable. So the FireWire cable is the input for the drive here, and then we have the adapters for that. So if I need to go to FireWire to Thunderbolt, I could do that, and if I need to go to old Thunderbolt to new Thunderbolt, I can do that. So adapters for adapters. Excellent. So a few menu items. I'm using the red mote with the Epic. As I scroll across the top, I have my featured items here, as well as, so if I want to change one of those items here, like a 50th of a second, I want to scroll, so the wheel allows me to change that depending on which way I'm going. If I choose 1/50th or 1/48th, which would be common for 24 frames per second. If the camera is set up with degrees, it would be 180 degrees would be the normal shutter angle. Here would be my color temperature, depending on what my resolution and frame should be. This is the ratio, the raw, compressed raw ratio. 8:1 is normal, so that would be ideal for our productions. I could go higher to get more data rate on there, but at some point it becomes noisier, so I don't want to push it too far. 8:1 is normal. So if I press menu, now this is going to take me through a tree of other menu items, including settings for the camera. Media, this is one you'll want to find right away. So when I select media and devices, and then I can either eject from here, but as I said, if I press the two user buttons in the front of the camera, I can eject that as well. So I would scroll down here to format media, and if I wanted to name it or change the number at least for the camera, I could select that and enter this into the keypad. Again, I'm using the red mote to scroll through these items. And then I scroll down and hit format. It's going to ask me one more time if I'm really sure. And the formatting was successful. And so it's going to show me on the bottom of the screen, I hope, somewhere, that 100% of my SSD is available, and that 14.7 volts, 14.6 volts of my battery power is there. I also have some audio information there, an RGB histogram, which is helping me to judge exposures. If it's far to the left, as it is right now, it's basically underexposed, but as you can see, we're pointing it at a black curtain. And if it was all the way over on the right, it would be overexposed. So I want to create a mountain range somewhere in the middle of that, depending on what the scene is. Some of the other menu items you might find under settings and setup, fan control. And so right now I have it set to adaptive preview, quiet record. So if you reset the camera at some point, it may be set to an automatic setting, which can be very noisy while it's recording. So I want to make sure that it's quiet record and also adaptive preview. It has a target temperature, and so if it reaches that point or gets too hot, it will automatically save itself. So we don't have to worry about the camera overheating in that sense. So navigating the menus can take a little bit of practice here. There is an app called Donna that has a preview of it. I believe it's available on phone systems, so you could sort of play around with what the items are. So I'm going to menu to back out of each one of these steps. Under the display settings, sometimes it's nice to have some guides. So if I have the frame guide on full, but maybe I want to guide myself for different aspect ratios. In this case, if we're doing some widescreen cropping, I could see putting some frame guides on there, and if I get out of this menu, you'll see that there's a white box. That's my 2.4 widescreen, but I'm actually still filming everything that's below and above that. So I've just switched it over from being a time absolute to an angle relative on the shutter. So depending on what I do with the speed, the angle will keep it in a relative amount of time, whereas when I'm in time, it's an absolute time for that shutter speed. So if I change it to slow motion, I have to also remember to change the shutter speed, whereas when it's an angle, it's relative to whatever the frames per second. I also switched the media to time remaining rather than percentage to give me a better idea of what amount of time I have. All right, so there we go. It set the shutter angle to 179.8. So we could switch that to 1/80th, or we could leave it at, there we go. So that would be more appropriate. If I wanted to do 5K widescreen, that would automatically give me the 2.4 aspect ratio and fill that up, and it's just going to crop in on the sensor. So I'm not going to see any of that other media. It's not going to record it. Whereas if I did 5K like this, it's going to record more data, and I'll be able to crop that 2.4 in post. That's one example of how I could use those different settings. All right, remember to eject your media. So if I press the two buttons simultaneously, there we go, it's ejecting the media, and it's safe to now remove this media from the camera. Now that I have the camera fully built, I'm going to check the level and see how we're doing. It looks like we're pretty close to balanced. So it looks like, as I start to tip towards the back, and again, I could make some adjustments, minor adjustments. I'm going to pan around here. And so this dovetail, I want to be really careful with it because there is no stops at the beginning and end of that. So if I do want to push this forward just a little bit, just to give my balance a little help in the backside. So now when I release that tilt, it doesn't really want to drift until I start to way down in that angle. And this is a good place to keep it. Obviously you want to lock the mechanisms if you are stepping away from the camera, but while you're operating, it's best not to have to fight the tripod head. It should be working with you, not against you.